If you've been struggling with anxiety and it's not improving or it's even worsening despite following all the advice that's out there, stay with me. This might be why. Hi there, my name is Ashley. I'm a mental health expert and I help Christians heal their anxiety using Christ-centered neuroscience without the typical just pray more advice. Let me ask you a question. How do you avoid the unavoidable? You can't give me an answer, can you? Yet, we try to do this on a daily basis. Some truths chase us no matter how fast we run. And today's topic is exactly one of those truths. Oftentimes, we as humans are trying to avoid the unavoidable. The harder we try to avoid pain, change, failure, or even reality itself, the more power we give it. Even though we conceptually know this, we still try to do this day in and day out. In today's video, we're talking about why this is likely the very thing holding you back. I find myself having to have so many conversations, either through my therapy practice or as a coach. And one of the biggest reasons that people's anxieties are not resolving is because they are constantly trying to avoid the unavoidable. Think about it. You've been putting off something, maybe a hard conversation, a painful truth, a painful reality, a decision that you need to make. I definitely know that I use avoidance and escapism way too much when it comes to life challenges. And you probably do too. We all do it. But most of the time, what we're avoiding is exactly what we need. It's what we need to grow. It's what we need to be able to bypass and reduce the fear that is fueling the anxiety. So the very thing that you want to get away from is the very thing that is going to help you get to your progress, where you need to be and where you want to be. How do we know that there are some things that are unavoidable? Let's go to scripture. Jesus says so himself in John 16:33.
I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world.
Now, yes, he was talking to the disciples in this verse, who he was forewarning was going to have a lot of trouble, tribulation, and suffering within their lives. We know that the disciples lived hard lives. They sacrificed. They were martyrs.
Despite the faith that the disciples had, I'm sure a part of their experience was wishing they could avoid the persecution and hardship that they would face because they made the decision to stand up for God, share the gospel, and have an allegiance to Jesus that was not accepted by everyone. Even when we think about Jesus dying on the cross, they wanted to avoid that. They wanted to avoid Jesus leaving after he resurrected and interacted with them in person. They wanted him to stay. It was, why do you have to leave? But Jesus did not avoid the mission that God gave him. He battled with avoidance. If you think about prayer that he did in the garden, Jesus grappled with, is there any other way? Do I really have to do this? Do I have to face this pain? And imagine if he had avoided and let fear consume him and not follow through with what God assigned for him, where would we be? What would that mean for us?
Trouble isn't presented as avoidable, but as something to face with a hope that yes, you're going to have trouble, but there's help amidst the trouble. It's up to you whether or not you're going to receive that help or not, but there is help, there is hope. This openly acknowledges that painful seasons aren't optional. You cannot opt out of them. They are a part of life's structure. It's not if they're going to come, it's when. A lot of us would like to think we're the exception, that certain things aren't going to happen to us. Why not? Who gets to determine who's the exception or not? We don't get to choose always what troubles we deal with. Sometimes we can influence them through our behavior and our choices, but for the most part, we don't get to pick the uncontrollable aspects of our troubles. One person comes to mind is a common story that you often hear about when it comes to suffering and pain, and that's Job. He lost everything in a very short time frame. And in Job 14:1, he even says, man who was born of a woman is few of days and full of trouble. He was righteous. He was committed to God. And so it does not make sense that all of a sudden he's losing everything. That's how he describes the human experience. So why do we think that there are certain things we're going to be able to avoid? I'm not even talking about extremes here. Let me give you some common ones that I see people trying to avoid. You cannot avoid or escape strong or inner emotions. They're going to come up one way or another, and if you don't deal with them, they're going to show up in your behavior, and you're not going to be able to control it. You're going to say everything is fine, and in your behavior and attitude is going to let everyone know that you're not fine. A big one that I often talk about is you cannot 100% avoid hurt. I hear so many people say, I don't want to get hurt. Nobody wants to get hurt, but hurt is a part of the human experience. You will be hurt even if the person doesn't mean it. You cannot avoid stuff like that. You cannot avoid heartbreak. People are constantly trying to avoid discomfort and sadness at this point. People are trying to avoid any emotions that's unpleasant. And I have to tell them, it's a part of human experience. You're not going to be happy all the time. You can't avoid unpleasant experiences. You cannot avoid fear. You can't avoid imperfection. You can't avoid hardship. And you definitely can't avoid unpredictable moments. I know how much we like to control, but most of what happens in your day is outside of your control. I'm telling you today, stop trying to avoid it. It's part of life. Acknowledge it. Certain experiences you will not be able to avoid. It just comes down to it. That is a truth that we have to accept. So many of us are not willing to accept it. We fight it. We go against what is the natural human experience. And when you try to avoid the unavoidable, you automatically set yourself up for being more anxious. So if you are finding yourself trying all these things and still being very anxious, start asking yourself, what am I trying to avoid? And likely you're going to come up with answers that fit this truth, that you're trying to avoid something that's unavoidable. When you accept, you will see that your anxiety will go down. You will be less fearful and you will have less emotional breakdowns. Neuroscience supports this. Maybe you don't believe all the other stuff that I'm saying, and you're saying, Ashley, you're reaching. How does it increase your anxiety? Let me show you the neuroscience that backs this up. So I've showed you before in a previous video the anxiety feedback loop.
If you're interested in checking out that video about the anxiety feedback loop, I've included the link up here at the top, but it will also be included in the description section.
This is a cycle of anxiety that is occurring. So when you experience anxiety, this is happening over and over again. As you can see in the section, the brain is trying to figure out what's the best way to deal with this sensation of anxiety. It usually is wanting to opt for one or two things: avoidance or escapism. Now, this is the part where we are all tempted to do either one, and most of us are. We're going to try to avoid it or we're going to try to escape it. All right. At this part, you got to interrupt the cycle. It's going to be natural for you to avoid or escape, but you have to be intentional during this time. And when you ask yourself that question, am I avoiding or escaping something? It allows you to identify how far you're going with this. And is there anything that you can face within your situation? Now, if you actually do the avoidance or escapist behaviors during that time, you send the brain the message, hey, this must be really as bad as we thought. We should be fearful. This is dangerous. So your brain stores the message and says, the next time this comes up, let's do the anxiety cycle again and be even more intense, because that will really help us to get away. And so what happens is that your anxiety and your fear is strengthened. Let's say you're trying to avoid change and you do something that avoids or escapes it. The brain is going to say, we already said that we're anxious and fearful of this, so let's rev up the anxiety cycle. And this loop gets kicked off as soon as you face any potential for change. Anything that remotely looks like change is now going to make you anxious over and over again. This shows how this avoidance and escapism actually does not help. I'm not going to lie to you. In the moment, avoidance and escapism is great in the short term. When you're anxious, it works, but it hurts you in the long term. I always like to tell the people that I work with, which heart are you going to choose during that time you're tempted to avoid or escape? And most people say, well, Ashley, can't I just not choose the hard? I don't want either one of them. And I know you don't. I don't either. But again, you cannot avoid the unavoidable. You have to choose. It's simple. We don't like it, but it's reality. There will be a hard. Are you going to choose it on the short end and face whatever it is and not escape or avoid it? Or are you going to deal with the hard on the back end? There's going to be consequences down the line, or even your ongoing experience with anxiety can be a consequence. So if you put off that conversation and you don't talk about it, years later, there could be so much more additional issues that have come up. Now it is really hard to face. And I'm here to tell you that the more your avoidance and escapism is a go-to strategy that you're using for your anxiety, your world is going to be small. All of the major goals, all of the major accomplishments, all of the successes that we all strive for, they require facing some things that make us anxious. And if you avoid or escape them, you will not go to the next level. So if you want to live that life, then by all means. But if you want more, guess what? You're going to have to face some things that make you really uncomfortable. Can you have a small conversation? Can you express yourself? Can you embrace the change? Can you lean into whatever it is that's there? When people are trying to face their fears, what they're often looking for is that moment where they're no longer afraid and they feel like once the fear is gone, I'll face that thing. That's not how it works. You got to face that thing while you're afraid, while you're fearful. Because, like I said, that's the only way you're going to get to the point where you're not as fearful, where it doesn't bother you. You have to go through it. You can't go around it. So again, the thing that you're running from is the thing that is very much going to transform you. Avoidance only delays what must be faced. It gives you a false sense that you've dealt with the situation. It will come up again. But the moment you confront the unavoidable, you're going to take your power back. Just because you ignore it doesn't mean it's going to disappear. And it's not disappearing. It's showing up in your anxiety. You just don't know it, but that's where it's showing up. The unavoidable is coming either way. So the question for you today is, are you going to continue to try to avoid or escape it? Or are you going to start facing what is already going to come back again? Are you going to face what's waiting for you? Because life always has a way of bringing us back to the lessons that we refuse to learn. I'm a witness to that. The lessons that I'm trying not to learn and I'm trying to get away from, God and life brings me back to it every single time. And I'm like, I thought I avoided this. I thought that I escaped this. In order for you to really get the results, you have to start facing what it is that you're running away from. If this spoke to you and if this video helped you, drop your thoughts in the comments section. And make sure you like and subscribe to the channel so that you can get additional notifications when I release similar content. We're in the process of building this channel because these are important topics and aspects of anxiety that people are not sharing. But this is the real stuff that helps you to go from ongoing anxiety to a life where it happens occasionally. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in an upcoming video that will be dropped soon.